All right. Hello and welcome to Choose a Fi. Today on the show, we have an episode that I've really been looking forward to since I saw a Facebook post. So, in our Choose a Fi Facebook group, we get a lot of amazing posts, but this one stuck out to me. So, Audrey wrote, long post ahead. And then she went through this incredible list of actions that her and her husband have taken since finding the Choose a Fi community. And it runs the gamut from taking countless trips using travel rewards to finding a new career path to little things like optimizing taxes, reducing cell phone expenses, and attempting to max 401ks. So it's got a little bit of everything. And I'm just really excited to dive into this story of a family taking action. Because as you know, at Choosify, we exist to convince you, to compel you to take actions to make your life better, one tiny little change at a time. And no story sums this up better than Audrey and her families. So with that, welcome to Choose FI.
You're listening to Choose FI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. Choose FI, your home for financial independence online.
All right, Audrey, welcome to Choose FI. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Thanks for having me here, Brad. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, this should be fun. So I love these stories of people finding the community and it transforming their lives, just like this lightning bolt. But it wasn't exactly a lightning bolt in your case, right? It was, okay, I saw a friend post about, oh, you can use credit card rewards points to travel for free. This sounds too good to be true, right? Like maybe trust but verify, or not even trust, but try to figure out, does this make sense? So I'd love to hear that part of the story first, because I think that's the inception of the financial independence aspect.
Yeah, definitely. So I happened across it, like you said, on a friend sharing it, and I dug into it a little bit and researched, the Disney option there to go to Disney for free or virtually free. And I thought, I think this might work actually. And so I proposed it to my husband, who is probably the more risk averse, I guess you would say. And he was like, I don't know. And I said, well, honestly, I'm the financial person and I'm not a huge risk taker myself, but I was like, I've done my research and I think this is something we could do. And I don't think there's much harm in it. We're good at paying off our bills. We don't ever charge anything more than, what we normally would. And so I don't think it's a big risk on our side. So let's see. In worst case scenario, we at least get, a little bit towards our trip. And that kind of has snowballed into a huge list of different things. After I found the Disney post, I thought, I'm going to check this out a little bit more. And wow, it just opened my eyes to the world of Choose FI and the FIRE movement and, all the things that you can do with it. And so it's just been, like I said, it opened the door to this huge world that I hadn't ever really considered. So it's been a sprint and a marathon both since that time frame.
Oh, that's interesting. What a great way to describe it. A sprint, but yet a marathon. I think that's what FI does feel like, right? Because you get into it and you're so excited to make all these changes, and you are kind of like sprinting through those early things, but also it is long-term thinking. So right, by its very definition, it's a marathon, right? Because while you might get to FI in some abbreviated time, and that might be 7, 12, 15, 20 years, who knows? Like, I mean, certainly more abbreviated than getting to traditional retirement, but it really is a lifelong endeavor of thinking long term.
Yeah, and it kind of felt like I found my people a little bit. Like we lived this lifestyle naturally, but I finally found some others who lived the same way and have picked up a ton of great tips and ideas along the way. So it was kind of finding your tribe a little bit too.
Yeah, so we're going to get back to the travel rewards, certainly, because I have a lot of questions. I think you might be more of an expert than I am at this point based on your posts. But yeah, so finding your tribe, and you might have been natural savers. So I want to really dive into that. So let's start with the natural savers. And I think that might be more, let's go back to the inception of your adult financial lives. Where did it find you when you and your husband got married, I guess, or maybe even predating that, like with college decisions? Talk me through like those early formative moments.
Yeah. So I grew up in a family very financially conscious. My folks were, again, like the Dave Ramsey choose FI people before that was even a thing. A lot of my clothes were from garage sales or mom made them. And not that we couldn't afford nice things, it's just we picked what we wanted to spend money on. And my parents were very diligent to save for both my brother and I to go to college, and they paid that for us, which is a huge, huge blessing. And I'm super, super grateful for that. Kind of started out, we had this certain amount of money that we could spend for college. And if we did it cheaper, then the rest was ours. And so I took the bull by the horn on that, and I graduated early. I graduated with a double major in 3.5 years, and was anxious to get out and start working on my own. My husband and I dated through college. We're high school sweethearts, and we dated through college. And then once he was done with school, he went on to grad school, and I followed to the town where he was at and started my working career there. We got engaged and married, and at that point in time, my my net worth took a big drop because he loves it. He's like, my net worth increased because I cut my loans in half. But he grew up in a family that was also very money conscious, but he had to pay for college and then chose to go into physical therapy in grad school. And there we hit a massive amount of student loan debt. And we did that diligently. I mean, we lived on my salary. I didn't make a lot, but we lived on my salary and took out the bare minimum that we possibly could, and have lived on rice and beans budget, all those years, but have since worked hard to pay that off. So we kind of started out in that trajectory and have taken it from there.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot. There's a lot of really good stuff in there. So it's kind of like the tale of two colleges, if you will. And that might be a little over dramatizing, but let's talk about your parents and how they set that up for you specifically and that decision point. Because I think this might be really applicable to a lot of people in the FI community who have been diligently saving for their kids' colleges. It might be in 529s, it might just be general net worth. And maybe they're like Jonathan, our good friend Jonathan, former co-host, who is at this point pretty leery of the value proposition of college, right? And certainly the 4-year glorified sleepaway camp, right? That we've kind of mockingly called it. And keep in mind, I am as pro education as a human being comes. It's just a question of, okay, is there a return on investment of this path, this societal path that we kind of all just follow, right? So that is a very long preamble for your story. Might be interesting to a lot of people who are, hey, my kid's 12, my kid's 14, 16, they're thinking about college. How do I maybe set up a value proposition for them where, okay, I have this amount of money saved. It's ultimately your decision, right? Where you go, but there are very different ramifications for, hey, if you get a scholarship, well, all of this money is yours. If you spend all of it, but have no debt, then wonderful, you've got a degree. If you, like you, Audrey, end early, graduate early, well, that's also beneficial to you, as opposed to just, hey, mom and dad are paying the bill. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and kind of how that intersected with your own story.
Sure. Yeah, we relate a lot to Jonathan's story and his, hindsight looking back perspective. As we're planning for our children, I'm not sure we will take the same approach that necessarily we did. I mean, definitely save, but there's just so much more out there than a 4-year degree. And we were kind of funneled that direction. And I don't know if that was just, I think we're similarly aged, Brad. That was just kind of what it was. Like, tech school wasn't really even on the radar. That wasn't something the high school counselor pointed you towards. But now we'll talk about this, I'm sure, later, but with Salesforce and whatnot, I'm like, man, I wish I would have known then what I know now. But my parents were great in that, they did cover those costs. And I looked at it as an opportunity to be able to move through school quickly and come out stable. And that was something that my parents had always just set us up for was, you want to be a productive member of society and be stable and on your feet. And so I just felt like I think it ended up being about $10,000 that I saved or that I had left over when I finished in 3.5 years. And that was a really nice stepping stone for me to set my life up. Now, of course, I got married and 10,000 was nothing compared to the debt that we took on. But I was able to not have a car loan and lived in an apartment, but I didn't have a bunch of other expenses going on either. So it really was a really good launching board, I think, for smart financial decisions down the line.
And now your parents at 17 said to you, hey, here's the pot of money. You can do whatever you want. So theoretically, if you got a scholarship, you would have had that whole pot of money. Am I understanding correctly?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't necessarily ever come out directly like when I was in high school and say that, but it became clear. Like I was getting, after my second year, I double majored in business and Spanish, and I needed to take some Spanish courses. And it was easier to take those during the summer abroad, or I actually went to Mexico and did that for my first summer to knock out some courses early, and that helped me get ahead. And then I actually did it again the next summer. And then it was like, oh, I really think I can hammer this out in 3.5 years. And they were like, yeah, if you do, the rest of your account is yours. And so at that point it was like, yeah, I'm running for this and I think I can make it happen. And so that's kind of where it came up.
Okay, gotcha. So now let's fast forward to, as you've kind of jokingly alluded to here, the albatross of a lot of student loan debt. But obviously your husband did it very intentionally, right? To go to PT school. I think you said, at least in the Facebook post, he had $200,000 of student loan debt. That's a significant amount. What are your options at that point? What are you thinking? How did you ultimately pay this off, or what's going on with those loans?
Right. So he came out, I think we're at 160,000. And when he was done with PT school, we moved for his job. He kind of got to pick where he wanted to go and I followed along. And at that point in time, it was just, we lived as meager as they come. And the goal was pay it off as fast as we possibly can. And so I was able to get a job at that point in time. And he jokes, I do a budget, and at that point, we allowed ourselves $50 a month for fun money for each of us.
$50.
$50.
Okay.
And that had to be gifts for each other if we wanted to go out for lunch with a coworker. And then we didn't eat out unless it was like, I have a Groupon and you passed your PT boards, so we're going to go celebrate, but we got to use this Groupon. So, it was bare bones, but that was just how I was raised. And he always complains about it now, like, oh, those years were horrible. But at the opposite end, I'm like, well, you wouldn't want to go back to having loans, right? Like, it's nice that they're gone. So we just hammered it out. Every extra bonus, paycheck, Christmas gift, that went to student loans. We consolidated where we could. We did the snowball. We paid off the highest ones first. We penny pinched, and I managed it I scrutinized it. Like I made sure the loan company was applying the extra payments correctly. And we ended up selling. We'd bought a home in that time frame because at that point there was the $10,000 kind of a incentive from the government to buy a home. And so it ended up being a good deal. So we put the $10,000 towards the loans, and we did it in 7 years. We paid it off in 7 years. And our final payment, we had sold our home and made a little bit of money on it, and we took the profit and lump summed the rest. And so it ended up costing us, I debated whether I wanted to actually calculate it or not, but I did. It ended up costing us with interest a little over $200,000 all said and done.
Okay. But paid off in 7 years.
Yeah.
Which is remarkable. Wow. Was that a decision that you and your husband, like that inception point, he gets out of PT school, okay, it's 160,000 of debt at that point. Was it a decision that you guys sat down and overtly said, all right, this is our express goal to pay this off as quickly as humanly possible? Like, was it an actual conversation or did it just kind of evolve that way? I'm always curious how people think through massive decisions like that.
Right. I would say it evolved. I mean, Craig knew when he married me what I was all about financially, and he knew even while he was in grad school, the mission was take out as little debt as possible, which was kind of counter to a lot of his classmates who would take out as much as they could because you get an amount for living expenses and they would live it up, and we just didn't. So, it was mission get to net zero as fast as possible. Really, I think we both share that. I'm just a little bit more fired up about it probably than he is, but he agreed we need to, you need to get to zero so you can start saving. And that had been a principle he'd grown up with too.
Yeah, no, and that certainly makes sense. I am curious, just like, again, very actionable tips. I think that's what our community, as you certainly know, loves, these specific things. So you mentioned in there about really scrutinizing to make sure that these student loan servicers or companies were applying your extra payments properly. So I think that's something that most people might have heard and it just kind of went through their brain because who knows even specifically like what to look for or what the other option is. Like how could they misapply it essentially? So can you talk through that? Because I think you are really perfectly suited to like just explain to the community what that even means.
Sure. So there were times when I would make a payment and I wanted to do it online. I didn't want to have to send a check because then it takes longer and there was more interest accrued. And so I'd make an online payment. And at that point in time, now it's been several years, I don't know if it's changed, but the servicer would take my payment and they would apply it to all the loans. So they would split it out and apply it to all of them. And I didn't want that. I wanted it all to the highest amount, highest percentage loan. And so every time I made a payment, I would have to email them and say, okay, please reverse the payment that just came through and apply it all to this particular loan. And it's a principal payment. So I'd have to really walk them through every extra payment. And we're talking a lot of extra payments in that time frame. But I quickly learned no one was going to be more of an advocate for us than I was. And so I was going to scrutinize every payment. I was going to make sure like the last lump sum that I sent was applied on the right date, because if it isn't, then you still owe more money. Like I really had to watch every step in the process. And I quickly learned, like I would call in to the servicer when I had a question. I knew more about how loans and interests worked than the customer service representative. And that's not a knock on them. It's just, like I said, these were our loans and I had studied them, I'd calculated it, and I knew how it was supposed to work more than they did. So I just dug in every time and made sure that it went the way it was supposed to.
Yeah, that is really, really cool. Like you said, you have to advocate for yourself, right? Nobody's going to do it for you. There's not malicious intent, I'm sure, on their part by any means. It's just that's normally how it's done, I guess. Mm-hmm. And you want it in a very precise way, and you have to advocate for yourself. And I guess that's probably, over 7 years, 84 plus times that you probably had to write an email in. And of course, you had a template and you could just copy and paste, I'm sure, and add this precise details. But you have to do it if that's what it takes. And I think you mentioned in there additional principal. I think that's a very, very important term. I think for most people, that will be applicable also when they're paying extra on their mortgage. Right. So there are some times where if you make extra payments, they like erroneously apply them as if it was like part or all of like the next month's mortgage payment when you intended to just pay one lump sum additional principal. So it's really, really important that you look at essentially the amortization schedule. Like I actually have it for my own mortgage in Excel. And then when I put an extra principal payment, if I do that, which I haven't in fairness done in a long time, but I have this sheet if necessary, it then auto calculates what the principal balance should be if they applied it correctly. And then I'm able to just log into my bank and see, okay, if it lines up, then I know it was handled appropriately. If it doesn't, then something is amiss. So that's how I handle it. And what's cool, Audrey, is right, like we all do this differently, but as long as it's your own system and you have it working for you, that's what's really important here. I listen to a lot of podcasts. The Tim Ferriss Show has always been my favorite by far, but for the first time ever, there's a real rival for that top spot. It's a show called My First Million. When I see a new episode show up in my podcast player, it's a drop everything and listen kind of situation for me. The show is all about business building and growth hacking, from how to make $1,000 in a weekend type side hustles to billion-dollar ideas and everything in between. The show is fun. It's infectious. The hosts, Sam Parr and Sean Perry, have an amazing rapport. In fact, if you're a longtime Choose a Vi fan, I think you'll find it's the closest thing to me and Jonathan you've ever heard. And Sam and Sean are legit. They've built and sold 8-figure businesses to HubSpot and Amazon, and they have an amazing network of friends and colleagues they get on the show to share their wisdom. If I lost everything and had to start over from scratch, I can honestly say the first place I'd start is with my first million. I think the mindset of business building they cultivate is unmatched, so I'd seriously just listen to every episode in their feed and go from there. The show is a little bit of an acquired taste, but as you get to know Sam and Sean, you'll see just how brilliant they are. So take my word for it and listen to at least a handful of episodes. I think you'll love it. So search for My First Million. That's My First Million on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Okay, let's fast forward a little bit. So Dave Ramsey is a gentleman, a name that came up earlier. And we've talked many times about Mr. Ramsey here on the show, who has done just remarkable things for tens upon tens of millions of people, right? There's no question what he's done has been immeasurably helpful for the American public. And I think what's cool is it's a very precise, defined set of steps. And it's for people who, generally speaking, are starting out on their personal finance journey. They may have debt. They may have little to no knowledge of personal finance. And those steps are so concrete and they're so wonderful. But then you get to baby step 7 and it's, all right, maybe there's something more. And I think that's what has been pretty cool about Choose FI and the financial independence community generally is we have a significant amount of a percentage of our community from Dave Ramsey because people are looking for more. They're looking for those optimizations. But that said, like we started, travel rewards, right? Just going back to that, like Dave Ramsey is famously anti-credit card at all costs. And I'm curious if you could talk through your own evolution of, was that something you always followed his dogma about? Was it something you were more open-minded about? Talk me through that initial inception. And then like, if there were any difficulties thinking about, oh, there might be something more here using credit card rewards points.
Yeah, so I never went through his program. I just was raised similarly. You didn't take on anything you couldn't pay for, that kind of thing. You saved, you scrimped. That was just kind of the way I was raised. I remember when I went to school, mom and dad got a credit card for me and I didn't touch it. It was only for emergency use. And then I think when I got out on my own, I found one that was like the double cash back or something like that. And so I quickly saw, I could put my grocery bill on there and pay my electricity. And over time, I would have like enough to get $100 gift card towards Lowe's or something. And so my husband and I went down that path quite a while when we owned our first home. That's how we would renovate. Like I said, we were on a rice and beans budget. And so any type of repair that needed done on the home, or if we needed a new ceiling fan or whatnot, we only would make those purchases if we had enough credit card points to buy a Lowe's gift card. So that's where I started. And now I chastise my young self because it's such a horrible use of credit card points to buy a gift card, but it worked in that time. And so that's kind of how we got started on the credit card rewards. We didn't know what we didn't know. And then when I happened across the travel rewards post in regards to Disney, it opened my eyes then to the real possibility of using that to not just buy a ceiling fan here or there, but really to optimize travel for our family.
Yeah. And just for everyone listening, we will have this in the show notes, but you can read that step-by-step guide to going to Disney at choosefi.com/Disney. And yeah, it's very precise steps. And that was actually the very first travel rewards trip that my family took, which is almost 10 years ago. And actually, no, it's 7 or 8 years ago at this point. But when we started planning, yeah, it was nearly 10 years ago, which is crazy to think. And I was in the same boat as you. As when I first learned about this, it sounds kind of too good to be true, right? Like, how are people traveling the world for nearly free using these points? Like, it has to be a scam. There has to be some gotcha moment, but it sounds like similar to you. I just kind of went down the rabbit hole. I tried to learn as much as I possibly could. And then you realize, okay, what's the worst that happens? I open up one credit card, I get all these points. I could trade them in for cash, like you with the Lowe's gift card. And you shouldn't chastise yourself about that. That was a good decision at the time, right? That's all you knew. And what's the worst that happens if you got the Chase Sapphire Preferred or something? You get a 1% back in cash and you get a check for $600 or something. That's not too shabby. But then you realize, oh, wow, we can actually travel. So one thing that jumped out to me was your 5-year-old. This was in June, so this may have been updated in the last 3 months, but your 5-year-old has already been to 33 states. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes. Yeah, and that's higher now. We took a big trip
Oh,
this
goodness.
summer, but yeah, my kiddos are very well traveled only because of the travel rewards program that y'all have kind of opened up to me or, opened my eyes to. So it's been a huge blessing.
Yeah, that's cool. So where do you guys generally like maximize the rewards points? Are you more hotels? Are you flights? Are you both? Like, tell me how you think through your strategy.
Yeah, so I'm a little obsessive, I'll be honest. And my style isn't the right style for everybody. I know you're more kind of like a start it and let it ride. And I am like I was on the student loans, like I optimize everything. So we both have a companion pass right now, and we run that on a rotation because there's 5 of us in our family. And so I'll get it 1 year and my husband, so then I'll have the companion pass and then he'll get it the next year. So we have 1 year in the middle that overlaps where 2 kids fly free if we all 5 go. And then on the off years, then it just 1 kid would fly free. And we kind of do those bumper years where my husband and I will take a trip or something like that. So we optimize on the flights. We only fly Southwest. Thankfully, they're close and we pretty much can get where we want to with them. I do a lot on the hotels. I'm a big hotel person. And then I try, one thing I found, I try to either pay like, the Disney tickets, kind of using that model, try to either use Capital One Venture or something like that to cover the costs of the activities that we're doing. And then I also had gotten into the checking and saving account bonuses. And so my goal often is to cover a whole trip, hotel, flights, anything I have to pay cash for with either credit card points or saving checking account bonus.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So it sounds like you are the ultra optimizer. I love it. That's what's cool about travel rewards. That's what's cool about the FI journey is like, it really is very personal because like you said, I am like a set it, forget it. I'm kind of like more a satisficer than the maximizer. I think like I'm very happy to just, I guess stress mitigation is my kind of guiding light. And if I can get significant, it's like an 80-20 analysis plus satisficing, I guess, right? It's like, okay, this is good enough for me, but I love meeting people who are the maximizers. So hotels, I think hotels are usually like one of those, the easy ways that people can benefit regardless of where they live. Like you mentioned, I guess you live near an airport that has a Southwest presence, which is wonderful. And now
Right.
for anybody listening, just one little tip, go to Google and type in whatever your city is and then airport wiki. So this is what I always do. So like for me, it's Richmond Airport Wiki. So it just takes you to the Wikipedia page. It'll usually be the first one. And then you can scroll all the way down and go to airlines and destinations. So this is a great little travel rewards tip just for not only your home airport, but where you're looking to fly into. And you can see what airlines fly into and out of that airport. And you can see the routes, right? The specific, not the connections, but like the very direct flights. And now, as we talked about with Lynn Mettler on episode 393, Southwest is one of just the best ways to use travel rewards points because there are no blackout dates. There's no limitations on the number of reward seats. It's just, can you buy a seat with cash? If so, you can use your miles. And that's what's wonderful. All the better, like your family, when you have the companion pass. So Southwest is great, but that doesn't mean nobody else can benefit, obviously, from travel rewards. It's just, that's the low hanging fruit. But also getting back to hotels, talk me through, do you have like specific hotel chains that you use or points? Like, are you using Chase Ultimate Rewards to transfer? How do you think through your hotel strategy?
Right. So we would do them all. We're not picky. I love Marriott because it's if you stay 4 nights on points, you get the 5th night free. So I try not to use my Marriott points unless I'm going to stay 4 nights. I kind of save those points for that. Same thing, IHG. They have a stay 3 nights, get the 4th free. So those are kind of like I save those for when we have a longer trip. I love Hyatt too. Like I said, we're a family of 5, and so they've got a little bit more space. Those I use for like 1 or 2 nights here and there. And we just got back actually late last night from a Disneyland trip. And at Disneyland, you can stay real close to the park, and it's better than staying on property proximity wise. And they have a couple Best Westerns that are really close. So I had done quite a bit of research before that we started that process, and have a couple motels actually there, they call them. So I did the Best Western cards, and those I think were like $89, and we stayed like 3
Oh, wow.
nights. So that's huge, to be able to knock out 3 nights for $89. So I just kind of look at where we want to go. I have our trips planned out for the next, probably 10 years, which is really sad. I mean, it's
Oh my
it's
God.
very fluid, but I kind of know like we want to get to all 50 states. And so, how do you fit that in? Because your kids grow up so fast. Like, how do you get it in? And then I just kind of plug and play, always kind of thinking ahead to like, what are we wanting to do next year, and how can I create a credit card strategy that's going to match
Nice.
that?
That is brilliant. I had no idea that you were literally in California yesterday at Disneyland.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Man, it's funny. I have all these points and I mean, literally millions of points banked. And it's
Oh,
like the utilization of them were just so, I mean, we get good benefit, but I think I need to have like a call with you and
yes.
optimizing calls. So stay tuned on that. That could actually make for a good podcast episode, frankly.
There you go. You got so much potential. It's awesome. Yeah, we actually, I didn't mention this at the time, but we were able to kind of combine some things together. And this is crazy. We got season passes to Disneyland for a year.
Wait, and
And
you live like 1,000+ miles from there, right?
yeah, but we have the companion pass. And so 2 kids fly for free. And we have a ton of Southwest points from the credit card. So honestly, we bought the passes, and then we don't pay anything for flights. We don't pay anything for hotels, really, aside from the credit card fee. And so we've gone like 5 or 6 times, I think, once this is all said and done. So it's been like we would have never, ever, ever done that. Obviously we're penny pinchers. It's a once in a lifetime gig, but it's been fun.
Oh, wow. Oh, goodness. You can obviously see the smile on my face, Audrey. That's amazing. We're proud of ourselves that we got season passes to the local amusement park, King's Dominion, here in Richmond, and
How fun.
and have been going. And my daughters are now roller coaster fanatics, so we've been enjoying that thoroughly. But yeah, I don't know that to get a season pass for a park that's 1,000+ miles away. That's pretty awesome. Just real quick, again, kind of actionable tips. You mentioned that your parents got you a credit card. I know this is going back about 15+ minutes ago, but that's an interesting strategy in terms of like getting either your own credit card or an authorized user card in order to like build your own kids' credit. I don't know if that's something you've thought about or have any plans to do.
Probably when they're old enough and in high school we'll do that. It was funny. I kind of even forgot I had it. When I pulled my credit report one time, I had this card that I didn't even know what it was, but it was my oldest card. I was like, well, I can't close that. So I called my dad. I was like, Dad, I called it was through USAA. I called them and they're like, well, your dad's a signer on that card. And I was like, that was my credit card for college. And so I called him. I'm like, Dad, I don't even have the card anymore, but can we keep it? Because I don't want to close it. It's my oldest card. He's like, yeah, that's fine. So actually, I think he's still probably on it, but I don't even know where the credit card is. I think it's probably long gone.
That's fantastic. Yeah, we were always talking about like second generation FI here, and like how can you do little things to, I guess, get your kids more educated in terms of personal finance, but also to help them, especially in really, really easy ways. So it's funny because just in the last week, I added both of my daughters as an authorized user on my Chase Sapphire Preferred account, which is kind of the account, even though there's an annual fee, that's the account that I keep open forever just because we have so
Right.
many Ultimate Rewards points. So yeah, I mean, they get the benefit of getting some credit history, some significant credit history, because I've had that card open for a while. And really, like, they're getting a little bit of benefit of my credit history plus my credit score, which is really nice. So I'll probably, even though I won't give them the card, I'll probably just use it once or twice a year. I don't even know, frankly, if that's necessary, but it's just more like a check the box type thing. So it's an absolute no cost way that I can help them get a credit score, as opposed to, hey, they're 22. they're trying to get their first credit card and they have no credit history. They have to get some secured credit card or some such. So yeah, for anybody out there who's thinking about these things for their own kids, that's not a bad little option.
Yeah.
All right. So let's yet again fast forward. So now we are, well, though I suspect we're in roughly the same time, right? So you and your husband have paid off all this debt. You obviously are optimizers. Maybe you've been, I hate to use the word deprived, but it sounds like, your husband said, like, looking back, I don't wish for those days again, or something along those lines. Like that was tough, but it was in service of a goal, right? Obviously, it was for a very, very good cause. And now you have no debt. Where do you go from there financially? Like, did that predate Choosify? And like, what do you think about your savings rate, I guess, prior to finding financial independence? And like, how did the evolution happen in terms of, okay, how we look at our financial lives post that student loan debt?
Right. So those got paid off. And then it was a few years that we were just, saving and trying to make good progress, trying to catch up, frankly. I mean, it's been that since we paid off the loans, just trying to catch up to be where I feel like we should be given the age that we are. And just kind of doing what I thought was best, frankly. And then through the travel rewards found that. And I remember we were on a trip back to Oklahoma from South Carolina where we used to live, and I had found the podcast and I was binge listening to it. Had the two-eared earphones, and I would put one in. I'm like, Craig, you got to listen to this, as he was driving. And I'm like, listen, like, this is awesome. Just little tweaks, like optimizing the taxes and, jumping into the index funds and just letting it ride. My dad and my brother are big into stocks and trading, and, I've dabbled, but honestly, that takes a lot of knowledge to do it well. And I am not someone who wants to jump into that without knowing how to do it well. And so I quickly realized, thank you to ChooseFI, that I was like, I can do something. I can do the index funds. I can put our money there and let it ride, and I'll turn out okay. And then I don't have to stress about trading stocks and did it go up or did it go down, and did I sell it at the right time? And so we really just kind of started implementing the things that we heard there in our, that was probably early 30s. So probably I'm 37, so 5 to 7 years ago. And just, as I have time listening to the podcast and just taking little action tips, changing over to index funds. And I've always been a price shopper for cell phones and insurance, but, just hearing it has helped been a reminder and a motivator, to, hey, check that every once in a while. And just listening to little things. We've been talking quite a bit about getting into real estate investing, thanks to some introductions through the podcast. And so that's really where we're at. We're trying to save, as much as we can now. And we might talk about it a little bit, but with me going back to work and really just trying to figure out where the ducks fall financially, balancing that with just living a good life now too, trying to find that balance that's best for our family.
Yeah, that is so important, that living a good life and finding that balance. And I think that's for all of us, but I wonder if that's especially stark for you, who is that optimizer. And like you talked about, it's almost like a pedal to the metal, like, hey, we got to pay these off. The rice and beans, and I don't say this in any negative way. Like, believe me, it's so wonderful. And obviously you've transformed your family's trajectory in terms of personal finance. That it's a remarkable, remarkable thing. But that is a mindset that is hard to break. And we've seen a lot of our guests over the years be in that mindset and kind of having an evolution. And I'd love to hear you talk through over a fairly abbreviated time span, right? You're talking 5 years. It's not that long in the grand scheme of things. Like, to change a mindset is not easy, especially while you're on the path to find. I'd love to just hear your thoughts on how you've seen your own self evolve.
Sure. So it's funny, my husband has been a really good balance to that, where frankly, we still only get $50 of fun money each month for each of us. But we have annual passes to Disneyland, like there's a balance. And so ChooseFI has really helped me hone in my mindset, I guess, to say, like, we have the financial means now because we worked so hard prior to pay off the loans to do things that are important to us, but we don't I mean, we don't eat out. I cook all of our meals at home for the most part. My kids think eating out is going to Sam's and getting a pizza at the cafe. Like that's what their idea is. But we have taken the opportunity to choose what's important. And for our family, that's travel and that's time together, seeing, all the wonderful things that the Lord has created. And that's just where we feel like, we want to spend our finances. We still save a good bit. We still want to be on the FI path. We're trying to max out a 401k each year at least and save for real estate. But my husband's been really good about giving me perspective too, to say like, our kids are only young for so long and we want to enjoy them and get to make good memories together. And it's been a balancing act too. We could talk through this, but he worked a really big job for a lot of years, and me moving into the Salesforce world, actually we agreed he took a step back from management, and now he just works part-time hours and gets to pick our kids up from school, and that wasn't ever on the radar before. And so we have helped each other kind of balance like, okay, we only have this time in life for so long, and let's focus in and let's make the most of the time that we have while, cutting corners where we need to still have the kind of life that we want to have too.
Yeah, that's, I know you have 3 kids under 10. My kids are about the same age, slightly older. And yeah, they truly are only young once. And I think that's one of these things you kind of realize it is a journey, I think, for all of us, the mindset of FI. And obviously you want to get there really quickly, but then, you read an article like The Tail End on Wait But Why, or a book that I read, kind of skimmed through, is called Die with Zero, which is not literally dying as a pauper, but it's just more like reallocating spending to maybe your best years, especially once you're financially secure and stable, which, it sounds like both of our families are. And thinking in terms of, do I want to spend my money when I'm 80 or 90 and it's for an assisted living facility, or do I want to go on that extra trip with my family, or have that experience, or get annual passes to Disneyland, right? And I think the cool thing about FI is like, there are always these ways to kind of win and do both, frankly, like in your case, using travel rewards points. And I think that's right. Amazing. Like, you're not sacrificing, you're planning, and you're using your natural skills as an optimizer to kind of figure this out and win in every regard. So I think that's really cool. So, okay, you've kind of alluded to it a couple of times. So it sounds like, I guess, through listening to Choose FI has kind of actually evolved your own career path. So your career path, and then you just said, it sounds like your husband's as well, which is remarkable. So he's a physical therapist, but it sounds like he got into management, which might not have been ideal. And what you're doing is enabling him to live a better, more balanced life as well. So this sounds like a really cool FI story. I'd love for you to fill us in on it.
Yeah, so I heard about Salesforce for the first time on the Choose FI podcast. I'd been a stay-at-home mom for 9 years and just, had thought about what I was going to do if and when I re-entered the workforce, and hadn't really found anything that was a good fit for our family. Like I said, my husband is in physical therapy. He's done management for a lot of years. And a lot of that, frankly, was driven by, we need to pay off student loan debt. And so it was, what does he need to do to climb the ladder to get us to a point where we can make more money to pay off debt? And I was able to stay home. That was a choice that we made when our kids were born. But thankfully, he brought in a pretty good income that made that possible, and we could still live a comfortable life. But we started seeing, that management in his world, because there's such a shortage of physical therapists, was you still treat 30, 40 hours a week, and then you have all the management duties on top of that. And it was just getting to a point where I was getting burnt out as a mom, covering all the bases on the front end as on the home front. And he was missing out on a lot and having to work weekends, catching up on notes and things. And so when I heard about the Salesforce thing, I, prayed about it and felt like, wow, this actually might be something that would fit for our family. So I did quite a bit of research, and we took a big leap of faith. It was huge leap of faith again, and just bet on ourselves, I guess you would say, to say like, I think I can do this. I know I have the stick-to-itiveness to make it happen. And so I jumped into the Talent Stacker program that's endorsed by Choose FI and got my certification in about 3 months time frame, and found a job, a really good paying job. And I'm blessed there that I get to work from home. And so the last 6 months of our life has been just nothing but change, frankly, all really based on the Salesforce trajectory. Our kids are now in school full time, which they weren't before. We were doing a hybrid homeschool model, and they go to a private Christian school that was really important to us. And my husband has been able to step back from that management position and just work as a float physical therapist here in the region. And he doesn't have the mental burden of management. I mean, he misses some of those things. I don't want to say that he was great at it, but it did take a toll on our family. And he said, you have to choose your hard. And his hard this time is going to be, I'm going to not chase the career dream because I want to be here for my kids. And so we're really just in that optimizing stage career-wise now, trying to just spend more time with our kids. And I'm getting up on my feet in my Salesforce career now. And I'm excited about, where that could take us as a family and what that could mean.
Wow. Oh, that is so, so cool. I love just seeing the benefits for the entire family, right? Like that has literally, like your flexibility, your job flexibility has enabled your husband to change his career trajectory and be there for the kids. Obviously, it's a benefit for the kids, which is amazing. So yeah, that's super, super cool. So right, as you kind of alluded to, we've had Bradley Rice on the podcast a couple of times, starting way back. I think it was episode 117. And then Anita Smith was on episode 297, which was wonderful. And what's funny, and I didn't realize this at the time that I reached out to you to have you on the show, is you actually went on, the two of them have a podcast called Salesforce for Everyone. And that episode just came out a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, like I said, when I had you come on, it was just from this Facebook post I was floored by. And little did I know you're actually a multi-time podcaster here. So this is very cool. So for anybody who's wants to hear more about that story, right? Just go search for Salesforce for Everyone podcast, or we'll have that in the show notes, and it'll send you right to Audrey's episode. So that is really, really cool. All right, Audrey. Well, it sounds like this, I guess, entire path of intentionality has really just radically transformed your life and your family's lives. And I'm just really, really amazed by the action you've taken, starting way back when and continuing literally until this day. That, like you said, the last 6 months have been this period of change, but it sounds like a remarkably positive change.
Definitely, definitely.
All right, Audrey. So normally that would be the end of our podcast, but we are actually just recently, we've brought back the old hot seat questions. So I wanted to know if you were game for tackling them.
Sure, let's give it a go.
All right, let's do it.
In a world drowning in debt and rampant consumption, trapped by the chains of lifestyle inflation, these questions highlight the secrets of those who have broken free. Welcome to the Choose FI Hot Seat.
All right, Audrey, question number 1, your favorite blog, podcast, or book?
Oh.
Or multiple.
I'm kind of boring.
Don't keep it to just one.
Yes. I'm kind of boring when it comes to that. And frankly, there's just not a lot of time. Yeah. Right now, I spend a lot of my time. Right. I spend a lot of my time reading up on Salesforce things. Obviously your all's podcast and show, and any of the books that you recommended. I'm hoping to get through some of those on a beachy vacation sometime soon. I would say, like, where I try to spend my time, there's a book called Mama Bear Apologetics. I'm just really focusing in and honing in on raising our kids in a way that aligns with our family beliefs. Let's put it that way. So that's something I've been focusing in on from a reading perspective.
Okay, great. All right, question number 2, your favorite life hack.
This one is super simple, but like I said, we try to optimize our spending, and I really watch our grocery budget. And we try to be really healthy eaters. So whenever I cook ground beef or ground turkey for our kids, or to put in like spaghetti or lasagna or tacos or whatnot, I try to do like 2 pounds of meat to 1 pound of diced carrots.
Ooh.
So there's your stay-at-home mom hack, which is not really all that exciting, but
No, that's cool
just what
though.
I do in it.
Little gets it lasts longer, right? And a little healthier.
Yeah, and it doesn't taste any different. So we love it.
That's very cool. Never heard of that. I like it. All right. Question number 3, your biggest financial mistake.
This one's really embarrassing, and I should have known better. I was well into Choose FI at the time, but when COVID hit, we took some money out of the market at the time because my husband has been in PT all of his life and has always been in demand. And for the first time, like he was having to lay off PTs. So we made a couple decisions out of fear. And so I've course corrected since then, but it won't happen again.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to beat yourself up in hindsight, but when the world is imploding and, it's just an unknown scenario, I don't think that's unrealistic for many of us to kind of freak out and sell. So I think obviously you've learned something about yourself, and that in and of itself is super important. All right. Question number 4, the advice you would give your younger self.
When I thought about this, when I thought, I think I would first be more prayerful about some of the decisions that I made early on. And in that same vein, just thinking more long-term, big picture, like going back to the college experience and questioning, was that really even necessary? Looking back, I'm not sure either of us would have gone the same path, knowing what we know now, and just trying to be more considerate of those decisions in the moment rather than just checking the boxes and doing what everybody else does or says we should do.
Yeah, being more intentional. And I think when you have more information, it seems obvious, but it wasn't obvious at the time for you. It wasn't obvious for me. That's just what you did. But yeah, now with the benefit of having this information, we can potentially help our kids make different choices, or they might make similar choices, but maybe more optimized, right? So that's what's cool about this. All right, let's go with a couple kind of more quick hit ones. So a purchase you've made, I don't know, in the last year or so that has added the most value to your life.
Yeah, since going back to work, I haven't had near as much time to exercise. So I bought an under the desk treadmill, splurged on one of those, and I'm loving it.
Oh, wow. So it's a stand-up desk / treadmill? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah. So I have a stand-up desk for work and just bought a treadmill that is meant for going under your desk. It moves it's not as big and fancy as like a running treadmill, but it's mobile. And so I can move it around a good bit when I want to sit. So I can try to get in about 8 miles a day, just walking while I work.
Oh, wow. Okay. You've piqued my interest. That's incredible. Do you just kind of Google, I don't know if you know the particular brand, but like, do you just Google like treadmills for under desk, or like, how did you start that? If somebody's listening to this and like, wow, like in my mind's eye, I'm thinking like that clunky treadmills that are like $1,000 or whatever. Like, where do you even start?
Yeah, I found, a couple of people in the Salesforce group have talked about it, and I was like, oh, I need to get in on this. So mine is a Red Lero brand, but you can find them on Amazon or Walmart or whatnot. And you just Google under the desk walking treadmill. And it was like $300. It wasn't a huge splurge, but it's been great. So yeah, I'm loving it.
That's awesome. Okay, I suspect, knowing what I know about you and your debt payoff, that I know the answer to this. But if you guys own your own home, are you paying off the mortgage early or not?
Oh, I am so torn on that. We are saving to get into real estate right now, actually. So we are not actively paying down the mortgage. I loved, and I can't tell you the podcast host or guest or number, but there was someone who talked about putting that money into a savings account and kind of doing a little bit of both. And that really spoke to me because I'd love to not have it, but I also am an optimizer, and that if I can make more money somewhere else, that's really appealing too. So I'm torn.
Yeah, it's hard. It really is hard. And I go back and forth. I like that also. I don't remember specifically who told us about it the first time, but yeah, essentially you're setting up like a horse race, which is, okay, the money that I would have paid additionally to principal, instead of just literally sending it to the mortgage company, I'm putting it in some type of account that I control, whether that's the stock market, which might make sense depending on your risk profile, or some type of, I don't know, high yield savings, if there is any high yield, but more likely than not, it would be putting it in a separate brokerage account where you're just kind of letting it run in the background and assuming though it's not a guarantee, obviously, but assuming that over a long enough period of time, the return on that would actually help you pay off the mortgage quicker if you decided at that point where you have enough in that balance to pay it off in one fell swoop. Or you might just say, like you're saying, okay, psychologically, now I know I could pay it off at any given moment, but man, this thing is growing even better. So maybe that's not my best decision, but at least I could do it at any given moment.
Yeah, there's peace of mind in that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So last question for you is your goal travel destination with rewards points.
Oh, I have too many to name one, but
in the next 10 years, right? You've got it all mapped out. I love it.
Right. I would love to be able, my husband wants to go to like Bora Bora, and that's a hard one, travel rewards wise. It's just, there's a lot of moving parts. And so I'd love to make that happen for us, maybe for our 20th anniversary or something like that.
Okay. I like it. I think, if memory serves correctly, that my buddy Chris Hutchins, who runs the podcast All the Hacks, I think he had a very precise episode literally on Bora Bora for using travel rewards.
I'm going to check it out.
So really great show. And that specific one, I think will benefit you. So that's very cool. All right, Audrey, this has been amazing. Thank you so very much for coming on the show and just for taking all this action. It really is incredible. And I think a lot of people are going to benefit from just hearing all of these things that you've chosen to do and where you started from and the trajectory you're now on. It's a remarkable thing.
Thank you. And thank you, Brad and Jonathan, for creating this. Like I said in my Facebook post, it has been life-changing for us, and I'm very, very much grateful.
Yeah, you are quite welcome. And it's just, it really is wonderful knowing that for some reason, us talking into this microphone, it helps people take action, right? And that is literally why I do this, is so that everyone listening hears this and says, I can do it too. Right. And just gets up off the couch and just starts making positive changes in their life. And you and your family are the perfect example. So thank you.